Hello, this is the Jared Presley Experience. Today I have a friend of mine on, Rhee Lightner. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, Jared. Nice
Hey,
to see you. So my name is Rhee. I am a native Marylander who moved to Cincinnati in 2016 to attend the Art Academy of Cincinnati to pursue a Bachelor of Fine Art. So I graduated in May 2019 with a major in painting, minors in creative writing, and photography. And I've been living in Cincinnati because I love the community here, the artist community.
that's really cool. So that was for your undergrad, correct?
Yeah,
Okay, it's the undergraduate degree. At this point, have you thought of going back for a master's? Is that something you're planning?
yeah, I am. I am going to be starting my program at MICA, Maryland Institute College of Art, for my graduate program. This summer, it's a low residency program, so I'll be in school for the next 4 years.
Okay, so at that point, would you move back to Maryland for that period of time?
I'll be in Maryland for 6 weeks every summer for the next 4 years, but I
Oh,
chose
okay.
a low residency program because I wanted to be able to work. I support myself through my art making practice. So it seemed, at first I didn't want to relocate, number one, for a
Yeah,
master's degree, because I totally don't know where I want to live yet.
I
But I did
understand.
know I wanted to be home,
Yeah.
back in Maryland. So Maryland was my second choice. And this gives me the opportunity to go to Baltimore in the summer and then work here in Cincinnati during the rest of the year.
And that's nice too to be able to, you know, essentially explore some places in the summertime that you usually can't because you're not there. I know you're from there, but still, it's nice to reacquaint yourself with Baltimore. And it's been a long, long time since I've been there, about say 15 years, and I have no photos. I'm going to go again at some point to get photos. There's a couple of things I really want to visit again in Baltimore.
Yeah, what do you want to see in Baltimore, Jared?
What I remember, and I forget the name, it's this really tall statue of, I think it's George Washington. It's like this park area and the buildings around it. If you know what I'm talking about, it's this really pretty architecture, and it's like this really tall statue of this, I believe it's George Washington that's on top, but it's like this, and it's a park around it, but it's just this really pretty historic part of town.
Oh, I mean, Baltimore is beautiful and charming, and it's by the water. And I spent time in Inner Harbor and then in different pockets. It's kind of big. It's a lot bigger than I think people would have the perception of being, and it's extremely diverse. So, um, you can find yourself in questionable territories very easily, but also, the
Yeah,
good stuff is there too. Like um, I mean, you just go, Baltimore's a cool town, and it's got the largest collection of Matisse in the country, housed at
really.
the Baltimore Museum, which is amazing. And then John Waters is donating a huge portion of his art collection to the Baltimore Museum.
So when you mean the Baltimore Museum, that's the Baltimore Art Museum, or is it just called?
I think it's called Baltimore Museum of Art.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that would be the number one as far as anyone traveling to Baltimore to see. That would be the number one thing people should see.
I mean, listen, like I mean, there are just so many things. Like, first, there's a film fest that happens in May in Baltimore. And, so films from all over the world get previewed and premiered at this film fest. Directors, actors, everybody comes into the city. People who make movies and are involved in film are, in Baltimore during this time from all over the country and all over the world. So that's number one. Then you've got, the Hun Fest in June. But yeah, I mean, in my mind, yeah, you got to go to the museum. So Walters has a bunch of different artifacts from, different world religions. So, immediately, like, you would walk into, one area of the Walters and be greeted by this huge statue of like Ganesha or Mahakala, and just, oh, it's unbelievable. Great museums in Baltimore.
Well, for sure, and I will visit again. I'll probably, because it's relatively close to Washington D.C.,
Mhm.
relatively driving distance wise. So that's probably what I would do, is visit both cities at some type of road trip or whatnot.
Mhm.
But how, when you were applying to school, what led you to Cincinnati? Was there any specific reason you accepted as far as the art academy?
Yeah, I mean, it was weird, because I'd been trying to go to school for like 20 years, and had these, major obstacles that really prevented it. So, but during that time, I was always looking at the painting department, specifically, abstract painting. I've always engaged with abstract painting practice or abstract art making. So, you know, um, initially, like when I was looking at a bachelor's degree in high school, I looked at Micah and really, the paintings that were coming out of there wasn't really my thing, right? So I didn't apply to that school right out of high school, the one I'm going for my graduate program. But, so I was looking at the website for the Art Academy of Cincinnati and looked at the abstract paintings that were featured on that website. And that's what got me. That's what got me. A friend of mine had applied to Miami University, and they were talking about moving to Ohio, and said, there's a school nearby, you should look at it. And I kind of thought it was just sort of a lark, like a farce. I'll look at the school, and it'll just be like whatever. But that didn't happen. I looked at the paintings and thought, these are the kinds of paintings that I want to be making. And that's why I applied at Cincinnati.
That's really cool. And from people I've talked to far from the area, people don't really think of Cincinnati and art in the same,
Mhm.
like they just don't see that aspect of Cincinnati.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, and I wish it was more well known nationally and internationally, unfortunately. But where can you see your artwork?
Well, you can go to my website, rheelightnerstudio.com. So that's RheeLightner studio.com. Or today, I will have, starting today, there's an opening at Pendleton. Let me see, at Pendleton Annex. And this is through the CCAC, so the Clifton Cultural Arts Program. Has an exhibition running called the New Woman exhibition. So I have a photograph in that show.
So
And it's running till March 5th.
March 5th, it'll be
Mhm.
running to. And that, if I heard correctly, that's at the Pendleton or is that the CAC?
It is at Pendleton
Okay.
through the CCAC, because I think they're looking for a new spot, or they're like building another, or they're relocating. So they're having the exhibition in Pendleton.
Cool. Well, I'll put the link in the description to the event. The podcast will be up before the end of that time.
Oh,
And I was curious about your card readings. How did you get into that?
tarot readings?
Yes. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, my mom introduced me to tarot cards when I was 14 or 15. She was so when she was in high school, she used it's weird. So my mom's like my mom's always been psychic, but she was also told she shouldn't be. So, grew up very, very religious, even though my grandma, see, my family, everybody's the women are very, very psychic, but my grandmother was raised in a very strict religion or a religious environment. So, and there's of course the stigma associated with these perceptions and mental illness, things like that.
Yeah.
So, but so my mom had run around with these kids in high school who were witches and warlocks, and one even said that he was a count in a past life. So she became acquainted with tarot, and then at that time, and then introduced me to it when I was in ninth grade. So, and immediately I love the cards, but of course it's like, again, there are all these stigmas associated with, the practice of witchcraft or with tarot in general. And instead of, continuing to embrace that practice, I sort of engaged in other religious practices until I like worked my way back to this.
But with tarot reading, it's more, if you could explain in a general sense, because I don't know if everyone understands the general background of tarot as far as when you have a reading, what that entails, if you could, in a general sense.
Sure. So tarot cards are interesting because they're symbols. They're basically symbols for conversation, and depending on the images on the cards, they're communicating something specific based on this image, and so it's interesting because tarot was invented as a card game. It was a card game, and then it eventually became adapted as a way to tell fortunes. But people who were really wealthy had these things commissioned initially, royal families, things like that. Eventually, they sort of blame the Romanis or the Gypsies, but for sort of spreading the practice of tarot through Europe. But as in terms of like using it for fortune telling, the tarot, you come into a reading asking a question or having some intention, wanting some guidance, and the cards, based on the symbols on the cards, give a description or an answer to this question. And it's this, the symbols, what the card means traditionally, back when, basically there's no wrong answer in tarot. You can learn the definitions, you can learn the different symbols, you can learn the different suits, but essentially, again, tarot was created as a card game, and people started adapting that to, their purposes. So each family would have a different key, but tarot is also, especially the major arcana, symbols that are supposed to be of like a collective unconscious, archetypal images that everybody can understand and access. So that's how we glean answers. So even if you have no experience with tarot, you still possess the key to unlocking the information within the card, because it's just part of you, because these images are a part of all of us and our collective history.
Oh, for sure. And just from my readings with you, a lot of it, you can learn a lot from that, but it's also using what you've learned. If you don't really if you don't pay attention to really take it seriously, and it don't change anything, then I don't want to say it's pointless, but you don't evolve from that point. And for people that are kind of skeptical, or because you do readings, and I'll have a link, but as far as the readings you do, if people are kind of skeptical, what do you usually say to them, as far as if they're really skeptical, or like, oh, this is hogwash or whatnot? What would you say to, I guess, have them have an open mind at least to it?
Yeah, it's tough. Well, first, I think my physical appearance plays a huge role in your comfort with the cards. So, so we'll just start there. For me, okay. Like hospitality, because this is like a hospitality thing. If you're uneasy about something, it's my job to make you comfortable. And part of that is your visuals. You become more comfortable when what you see is inviting or I don't know, like innocent, right? And we have this perception of a cult as being dark and bad and ugly and gothic, and it is. A cult means hidden, right?
Yeah.
But also, because I use tarot for self-improvement, this is something that I don't want hidden. I want this to be accessible to all people. So I kind of make myself, a little bright and colorful and fun, when I'm doing readings. So immediately you're not associating, darkness or negativity, or even if I'm dressed in darkness, I want to, I want to shimmer, I want to like dress it up, so I think that's part of it. And then the next thing is like, well, what's the harm? As soon as because the thing is, Jared, is you can tell me that you're uneasy about tarot, and that's fine. But as soon as you sit down in front of me and you start feeling my energy, all of a sudden everything dissipates. So I think that's one thing I would say is anybody who's, nervous about tarot, first of all, don't do it till you're ready.
Yes.
Second of all, choose the person, wisely that that you're going to read with for the first time, and make sure you feel safe. And so if you walk into a studio and immediately you're like, I can't open up or feel comfortable with this person, then don't get a reading, because chances are you're not going to be giving them the information they need anyway. I'm not, like you're jacking things up with your erratic energy, because if you're comfortable with me, that's when I can pull from you the knowledge that I need. So, so I would say just try it. What's the harm?
Yeah. And I believe the first time for anybody would be the most difficult time, or the time where they really don't know especially if they haven't researched what's going on. And in my experience, really, it doesn't, anyone of any religion can do it, or non-religion, but for that matter, it doesn't, from what I've seen, there's no witchcraft or anything. It's just really fortune readings. There's no harm in it. And that's just my personal opinion, but I don't see any controversy in it. That's just my opinion on that.
Well, really, it's no different than, it's people read fortunes in a variety of ways. Some people, Bible dip, so they open the Bible, they put their finger down on a passage, and then that passage will guide them for the rest of the day. To me, tarot functions like a mantra, or it functions like even an advertisement. We're so conditioned to immediately be programmed with information as soon as we see an image. So immediately you see an image of, X, Y, and Z, and you're like, oh my God, this means this, or this takes me to this place, or whatever. You're already connecting information with the image. Tarot is no different. Mm-hmm. It's the images on the card. It's no different than being surrounded by this information, or visiting an art gallery, or I don't know. Yeah. And you don't have to, I know there is definitely some trepidation with people who are raised within certain religions. And I feel sorry that limits them in their personal exploration, because tarot can be a way for you to have your feelings, thoughts, and experience validated, and can give you an understanding of why things are happening the way they are and what you can do to, to change them. So, it's not bad. I haven't had any, Jared, I was going to say, I haven't had any weird things, but then there's the tarot that we're talking about, right? Which is where, a lot of the people that come to me in town want to evolve.
Yeah.
They have a certain level of self-awareness. They come to me because they want to be pushed and challenged. And then I work a hotline, right? I do a tarot hotline, and a lot of my clients there, they don't want to, that's just fortune telling. Is this going to happen? Yes or no? They don't want any responsibility. They don't want any insight into why the things are happening. And I'm being general, of course, but yes. It is literally like night and day. The differences between my practice in Cincinnati and then the one for the hotline is so different.
I didn't realize you had a hotline. That's interesting. But as we talked about, tarot's not, it's not like it just tells you something and and you just leave and don't do anything. That's not how it works from any of my readings. Without using what you've learned in your life, I don't want to say it's pointless, but you don't evolve. You're just where you were before. So at that point, there's no point in having another reading unless you try to take that next step.
Well, and I think people have different tarot reading styles, So I've been to many readers in my life and not gotten very many good readings, just to let you know. None that are memorable for me, none that I walked away from and said, I really got something from this. All of the psychics that I've been to that did give me useful information were either doing automatic writing or they were doing just mediumship. But tarot, I'm sort of unique in my practice because I give you a list of things to do.
Yes.
I say, these are things that I think you should follow up with. And, that practice for me is based on my background in natural health and natural, cooking, herbs and different, because I worked in that environment for a decade. So I have some familiarity with natural healing modalities and foods and herbs and stuff like that. So I just throw that in there because I feel like, hey, every little bit helps, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I've never had any other reader do that for me, ever. Any tarot reader ever.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
See, and that's the thing. Like when you're choosing a reader, I feel like that's the most difficult part. And depending, you have to look at the style, you have to see cost wise, what you're doing. It is a bit of, I don't think I've never seen any that's been too expensive, but it's still, you want to research before you put like money out,
Mm-hmm.
And that's the hard thing, especially if you don't know much about the practice.
So there's a word that always seems to, you ever have that problem where there is one word that always seems to elude you and you can't remember what it is. And it's basically, oh God, semiology, we talked about it in school. And when we were in school, I couldn't really understand this, right? Like symbols meaning something.
Symbolism?
But it's not. It's semiology.
Oh, it's like the practice of that.
Yes, semiotics.
Yeah, because I believe if you know Joseph Campbell, he was really big into that.
Oh, I haven't read any Campbell.
He's old school, but as far as symbolism and that sort of thing with cultures, that it's been a while since I have. But before we end, I was going to ask on one last thing because I was an art major in undergrad too, but you went later than I did. I went like after high school. That's point set because I was 18, 19 years old at that point when my freshman year. And from now to then, like, I feel like I've learned so much. Like there's a quote like youth is wasted on the young. And like, it just, because really at that point, 18, 19, I feel like I've improved so much where if I went back, that work would have been that much greater. So when you see someone like that young really like put out amazing work, they're geniuses, really. I feel like, but life, it's always about learning though, and art improving. And I'm still make art after all these years, and you do too. Well, thanks again, Rhee. I appreciate it. I will have the link to the description to the studio and to the art opening, which starts from this recording the 5th of February to March 5th. So, and that will be in Pendleton and Cincinnati. Cool. Thanks again.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Jared.
Oh, of course.
That's fun.
Thanks.